Well, all right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, we're going to talk about the police. We're going to talk about your rights. And I got to say this is always the touchy subject and nobody wants to, jump in and tackle it. And I understand that. And that's the thing. I mean, a fair amount of our audience, or at least, prior to this episode, were police officers and, that kind of thing. And it's not all bad. There is a lot of great guys out there, but hopefully we can help you navigate kind of some of the tougher situations that come up, because it turns out there's always gray areas and always different things going on and different things that we could have done better or that we could do to make the outcome better. And having a little forethought, of that prior to, maybe will give you the results that, that you're looking for when you deal with the police. So that's basically where we're at with it. Now, first off, I want to point out we're not lawyers, and this shouldn't be construed as legal advice. It's entertainment. See that on the bottom there? We're not lawyers. Entertainment. But that's the idea. But the idea, I was talking to a cop about 3 weeks ago, and he was telling me, he's like, where you work, is there a guy that's like an asshole? And I'm like, well, yeah. How'd you know? And he's like, but because a lot of people's work, there's that guy that's an asshole. And he's like, it turns out at the police station, we might have that guy too.
Right.
Now, in a perfect world, you would think that, and especially this is why I like sheriffs and things like that, because sheriffs can typically have control of their department, and they're like, hey, that guy's an asshole, let's get rid of him.
Right.
That's a good way to handle it. I know me and Kevin had this discussion a little earlier, and Kevin pointed out, if I hire somebody and he's an asshole, what do you do, Kevin?
You fire him.
There you go.
Nobody wants an asshole around. But there are assholes everywhere.
There are.
I would fire myself if I worked for me.
Exactly. I mean, it's amazing I still have a job. I mean, that's the whole thing. But there's one thing with just being an asshole like me, and there's another with where you go and you kind of inflict your pain on other people just because you're angry at home or whatever. What's the story of the kid who, mom yells at him and whatever and smacks him, and then he goes in his room and kicks the dog, and it's like, yeah, and the dog just gets the brunt of it.
Right.
Well, that's
it goes
kind
all the way down from dad's boss all the way down to the poor dog.
Right. And but you don't want it to, you don't want to take your stuff. And one of the things, I mean, that's kind of why, people look at first responders and law enforcement as like a higher calling, and they get so much respect because they're supposed to be people who can put that aside.
Right.
And be the peace officer. And you know what? A lot of them are that guy who can, hey, I'm going to take my anger and rage and leave it here. But again, we're all human, right? We can only, control as much as we control. But that's the amazing part of these guys, is no matter the crappy day I'm having, I still go put out the fire, or I still go, run into the burning building, or, I go and deal with the whatever, the traffic stop without beating the guy with my nightstick, whatever. It's funny, you always see, I keep seeing these posts on the internet, and they're like, well, they don't make bumper stickers like F the firefighters.
Right.
It just those don't come up as much.
Right. Right.
That was
Well, I
when
mean,
I was thinking of examples of nice guys. The firefighters kept kind of coming to mind. And
yeah. Well, I mean, it if you think about a job that, that's not very, you know, they're dealing with people on their worst day of their life. Everybody
yes,
they deal with is going through a terrible situation, whether they were committing a crime or a victim of a crime. There's something bad is going on in their life, and they're maybe in the not nicest state of mind when the police interact with them.
and that's definitely right.
Right.
And it's funny. I watch all these videos, right? Because I was getting prepped for this and wanted to kind of see what people are talking about with the police brutality, which obviously the videos that seem to make the internet are the bad ones. People record the bad interactions because that's what's most exciting and it's like controversial. Like I mean, we like a good conspiracy theory. When look at this scandal in the government. They're bringing in nuclear weapons and stockpiling them underneath the White House, and they're gonna do, and it's scandalous, right? You
Mhm.
don't like, hey, look, we got all this food and we raised the money privately, so it didn't cost the government anything, and we just gave it to all these people that were hungry.
Right.
That's not as scandalous and exciting, so we don't really care. I,
Right.
I
Right.
feel like that's what it is with the cop videos. After I watched a bunch, I had to go and like I was like, oh well, let me kind of make sure I have the right perspective for this episode. So I watched a bunch of cops like giving CPR to babies that were blue and
Yeah. No. Of
whatever.
course. Of
And
course.
hey, that guy had a seizure and his car is on fire and I'm pulling him out. And
Hmm.
and there were some cop hero videos. So,
Right.
but they were a lot harder to find than the cops beating the guy with the nightstick. Now, some of you might argue, well, that's because they're always beating people with nightsticks, but they're not always rescuing babies. Well, no, I don't know that that's true, but those are the videos that make it.
Yeah. It could go either
So,
way.
something, the thing is, like the anger and rage that seems to come over these guys in the videos, though, is unbelievable.
Yeah. Well,
And
I think you can see now. Now we're gonna get into the disparaging police part because we can get right into that. We've already given the precursor that not all cops are assholes, but let's talk about some of them. Uh, Around here, if you want to get steroids,
mm,
it's you're getting it from a police officer. There's not. I mean, they've
they're
got
pretty
a lock
much
on
the
that one.
go-to.
Yeah,
Yeah,
they've got a
they
lock
got
on that
that
one.
locked up.
And
Yeah.
if you've ever done steroids or ever had a roid rage or ever even been 19 and pissed off, you can understand what happens. When you take steroids, it's like you're 19 and pissed off all the time again. You know, you have to like bring your emotions down, purposely and you know, come to a calm place in your mind. Do some meditation, but whatever you got to do, some people are just a little bit more amped up than other people. You know, I had too many Red Bulls today, and just a little
Yeah.
little amped up. Um, so when the police show up, how do you behave? There's a lot of different situations where you might interact with a police officer. Um, First off, I'd like to just point out you should minimize all your interactions with police officers as much as possible. You know, that's the first thing. Don't see cops standing around doing something, go over and ask them questions, and you see that with people that do what do they? It's like crystal meth and like amphetamines. They want to go talk to the cops. You know what I mean? I don't understand what it is. It's like some sort of Darwin,
I think it
survival of
is
the fittest taking
Darwin
them out.
and yeah.
But it's yeah. Don't get don't go over and instigate cops.
No. And that's like one of the things we looked up here was can you give the cops the middle finger? Well, it
Right.
turns out there's a bunch of lawsuits that suggest that it is your First Amendment right. However, that said, it turns out it ends bad for a lot of people who do that.
Right. And
So
a lot of police officers don't know that it's legal to give the police the middle finger.
it's
And they
always
might want
amazing
to
to
ask
me.
you why you gave him the middle finger.
And I feel like that's fair.
Hmm.
If somebody, dude, if I walk up to you, on the street and I'm like, hey, buddy, and I, throw you the bird or even better, I throw you the
The
double
double.
bird,
You got to
right?
do the double. Yeah.
They
The
double.
double
That's
finger.
that's a commitment,
Right.
right? So I
I had
throw
to
you the
take out whatever was in my hand. I had to put it in my pockets. I had to
right.
consciously decide to make a double middle finger. That's somebody really wants you to go fuck yourself if they're
Right.
giving you both of them.
No, I'm looking here at the comments, and Uncle Whiskey says he's always been polite with the cops, and not once did they shoot him. It could be a coincidence. I don't know. I mean, I kind of feel like, there might be a theme there.
Right, right,
Um, and people should take that into account. Like, hey, I don't want to have a fight with this guy, so maybe I shouldn't act like a jerk. Now, I feel like if we're out on the street and you walk up and you're like, hey, Chuck, and you throw me, the birds there. Honestly, I might kind of be like, hey, and throw you the bird too, and we'd both laugh like we were in the military and everything's
right.
good. But I might come over and be like, hey, what's the problem, man? Can I help you? Is there
Mhm.
something wrong? You having a bad day? There's something I can do for you? You know, I don't think a cop would be wrong to do that.
Right,
I don't think, and I feel like you're inviting a conversation. And unless you're prepared to go down that road, and
right, right.
it's kind
You
of
know,
one of those things, you're opening the door, right?
right, right. Well, I saw it recently. There's I guess this is probably about 10 years back. A guy was driving down the road, in the back of the window of his pickup truck, he had written "I eat ass."
Who
So
doesn't have that? Right.
so the police officer pulled him over because the police officer thought it was inappropriate. He told the guy that he was gonna give him a ticket for obscenity if he didn't scrape that off of his window. And the kid said, "No, I'm not gonna scrape it off." Kid got arrested. Apparently, it's legal to have written on the back of your car, "I eat ass." He was not convicted of any crimes. However, he still got arrested. He still had to get handcuffed and go to the police station. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? You can also have it on the back of your truck. You know, it can say, "I don't eat ass." You know what I mean? Or
Mm.
maybe just don't write anything on your truck about asses or what you like to do to them. You know
I
what I mean?
I
That's also a possibility.
right.
So, I mean, there's certain things that are going to invite trouble, whether they're legal or not
Yes.
legal.
Yes. Like some states, like where I live, you could probably have like a big I support 2A and things like that. You could even have like a come and take it and
Right.
sticker on the back of your car. It won't even draw an eye. No cop's gonna be like, oh, that guy's a problem. Because you're
Dangerous.
every guy. You're
Probably
every
somebody
guy here.
carrying a weapon that car.
But right. But if I was in New York and I had a big come and take it sticker across my back window in my pickup, I feel like I would get pulled over 3 to 5 times more likely. You
Hmm.
know,
Right.
it just it's you know your audience.
I
That's
feel like I
kind of
remember
the
you having a specific license plate that drew
mm,
the ire of the police officers.
I always draw the ire of the police officers, but what am I? What can I do? That's what I would say. But it
All right, so
is,
let's talk about a
yeah.
traffic stop. You're
All right.
you're you're
What do
driving
we
too
do?
fast. Maybe you're not even doing anything. Maybe you're just minding your own business, driving under the speed limit
Dumb and
and
happy.
behaving yourself. You haven't had anything to drink today.
Nope.
All the good stuff. So please hit their lights. Find a safe place. Pull over. As soon as you can. As soon as it's safe, put on your turn signal. Pull over to the side of the road. And there's seven steps to a regular traffic stop.
All right.
First is police officer greeting and identification. Hello, my name is. That's what the officer's going to say. Then he's going to tell you why he pulled you over. He might ask you why
Oh,
he
they
pulled
like
you
to
over. Why?
ask.
Yeah. Do you
Yeah.
know why I pulled you over? Now,
What's the answer to that, Kevin?
the smartest thing to say is just no. I don't know. Maybe you've got a great sense of humor and you've got a good rapport with people, and you think I can start talking my way out of this. I know what
Oh,
I did. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I did that. Don't do that.
no.
Just tell them you don't have any idea what happened. And they're going to tell you what happened. They're going to, step number 3, they're going to get your ID. They're going to check the condition of the violator and the vehicle. So they're going to make sure you're not drunk. You don't seem obviously like you're, high on crystal meth. Nothing crazy going on. The vehicle, has license plates, has registration.
Right.
They're going to check all that stuff. They have a right to do that. They have a right to look in the back of seat of your car. If you have
Anything
somebody
they can
duct taped in the
see.
back seat of your car, they might
Right.
have further
Right.
questions, right?
Anything they can see is fair game.
It's fair game, right? Now, then they're gonna step 4 is statement of action to be taken.
Okay.
So, I'm gonna write a ticket. I'm gonna, whatever you're gonna do. I'm gonna give you this. Explain what the violator must do. So this is your court date. This is the ticket. You can pay the ticket or you can go to the court date. Up to you. End of conversation. That's how a good traffic stop should go.
All right.
So, what if the police officer, though, is that asshole?
Oh.
And he just got done at home beating his wife because she didn't make the dinner that he wanted. The
Right.
chicken was dry.
Right.
And now he's running into you. After he had to deal with dry chicken and smacking his wife, now you are the next person he's interacting with.
All right.
Right? So first off, you don't want to give a police officer any reason to be agitated. When they come up to the car, if it's nighttime, turn on your dome light so they can see in the back seat of your car as they walk up. If you have somebody duct taped in the back seat of your car, don't turn the
Right.
dome light on and give that away right away. But, as long as you don't have your crack pipe sitting out on the seat or anything, turn on your dome light, roll down the window, turn the car off, and put your hands on the steering wheel and wait for them to talk to you.
All right.
That's really your best bet on how to start one of these interactions.
Nope.
So, all right. So now the police officer's being a little bit aggressive, snatchy. He's a little snatchy with your driver's license, right? Now some people get really nervous about being pulled over by police officers. Some people are just have high anxiety in their day-to-day life, and being pulled over is like, really a crisis moment in their life. Adrenaline's going, heart's beating. You know, I know there are some people that are autistic, some people that have different situations going on, and they can have issues with dealing with police officers. Um, and so I was talking to a friend of mine. He gave me a card, or he showed me a card that one of their clients used that was autistic. And the card says, I am autistic. I may have trouble communicating. Eye contact may be difficult for me. I'm easily overwhelmed by intense sensory input, like sounds or bright lights. When I am scared or frustrated, I may act aggressively. If I am lost or in trouble, my emergency contact is on the back of this card. Please be patient with me. Thank you. So, giving this card to a police officer with your driver's license, if you're autistic, might be a good idea. Um, it lets the police officer know that there's, extenuating medical circumstances. Just because you're autistic doesn't mean you can't drive, but it may have, bright lights of a police officer might be a lot for somebody
Right.
that's, on the spectrum.
Well, that's kind of one of the things that I always worry about is that the anxiety for everybody kind of goes up, unless you're kind of a well together kind of person. The anxiety goes up when you end up having these confrontations, right? This is not a normal thing for most people to get pulled over by the police. And a lot of people, they see these scary videos on the internet of things going bad, and people have like my interactions. I've never had a problem with a cop,
Hmm.
I think once when I was a kid, I was out with a bunch of friends and we were all like, you all work at the mall or something and pick each other up at the end of work and we're all off to a party to go do bad things or whatever.
Hmm.
Go do some underage drinking or something. But the cop pulls us over and grabs everybody's license and whatever, and then comes back after he runs all the licenses and throws them all over the floor of the car and it's like, yeah, here's your fucking shit. And you're
Hmm.
like, I mean, that's kind of a dick, right? That guy's being a dick. But just the same, it, no, nobody got shot. It wasn't the
Right.
big deal. Nobody got, dragged out of the car and frisked and, all the nonsense. It just, was the guy trying to be tough, and whatever. I can live with that. But and your sense of right and wrong, somebody who's the big justice warrior, that I am or whatever, you're kind of like,
Right.
oh, this isn't right. But you know what? Whatever, man. Just roll. Just roll
Yeah.
with it. The big thing
File a
is
complaint. See where that
yeah,
goes.
yeah, exactly. That won't help you. But that's the thing is kind of deal with it later. If they're not doing something permanent, then don't worry about it. If it can't be undone or it can be undone, then it doesn't really matter. It's not worth getting shot. Everybody's like, well, I'm not going to put my hands behind my back when I'm being arrested because I have to explain to you what's going on.
Yeah. I
That's
can't
how
talk
people
without
get
using my
shot.
hands. You
Right.
know.
It's well, I don't understand what's happening, so I can't comply to your wishes.
Right.
A lot of the cops, the videos, it seems very stressful for them.
Right.
When they're like, "Oh, put your hands up," and they seem very intense and very freaked out about it. Um,
Yeah.
in a
And
lot
there
of the
are a lot of
videos,
people that get arrested for resisting arrest,
right?
and you don't have to have another charge. You
Mm,
know what I mean? They can drop all the charges they want and keep that resisting arrest.
right.
So if they're gonna arresting you, let them arrest you.
Now,
Like one of the commenters mentioned, the time to argue with it is in front of a judge, not in front of a cop.
Exactly. The negotiating and what happened and what circumstances, that's all really for the judge. That's not for the cop. Oh, well, it was dark and that sign was broken off at the base and whatever. And I
Hmm.
mean, you can point these things out, hey, buddy, yeah, but you see, there was
Politely,
that
right?
tree leaning in front of it, and I couldn't see anything. I didn't know the speed limit went from 55 to 20 and whatever. But it's not the time to argue it. You can discuss it, but arguing it in a heated debate is not going to help you in any way.
Right. Especially
Um,
in a high anxiety situation like that.
right. That's I always watch you see these it is amazing to me how many cops, at least in the videos that we see on the internet, don't seem to know the laws. They'll be like, "Oh, you're in our state without a front license plate, and our state requires a front license plate."
Right.
Well, yeah, but we respect the laws of other states because that's how the Constitution is written, that licenses and things will be honored from other states so we
Right.
can have interstate commerce and travel. And, but if the cop doesn't know that, just keep telling him he's wrong over and over again is not going to help you.
Yeah.
You're better off.
Where'd you get your law degree? Facebook?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That
Well, I
doesn't
mean,
end
he
well.
did it doesn't have a law degree either, but that doesn't mean that you should be arguing the points of law. And, let me just point this out before we get any further. You've
Yes.
heard about these people that are sovereign citizens in the
Yes.
process of locomotion, and so they don't have to abide by any regulations. Argue
Yes.
that. See how that goes. It's not going to work out well for you. Keep your keep your paperwork in order and keep your registration up to date. Have your inspection sticker done. Have all your stuff together, and don't try and debate what the Constitution says your rights are,
Yes.
because the cop doesn't buy any of that, and the judge probably won't either.
Right. And I can't help but note here that every one of our comments for the last 5 minutes is don't say anything that's going to incriminate yourself, or, less is more.
Right.
The general theme is the less you say, the better. That's almost a direct quote from Nick here.
Hmm.
But that's the thing. People say so much, and the cop will just write it down, or it'll even be on his body camera or whatever.
Right.
And you saying things that will help your case does not usually. Usually,
Now,
giving them more information is not going to help you.
right. Now
It's going to work the other way.
you should be aware of the laws in your state as
Yes.
far as recordings go. Now, in most places in the United States, you can record an interaction with the police officer. If the police officer walks up to your
Yes.
window though, and you've got a phone pointing in his face,
Yeah, that's a
you're
no go.
already starting off the conversation in an aggressive way.
Right.
So
Exactly.
it would be
You're
okay to
setting a
say
tone.
I'm recording this and have your phone recording in your lap. It doesn't have to have video. It can just be
Right.
audio, and let the officer know that, and hypothetically that should be fine.
Right. My buddy was a former trucker, and he's got one of those dash cams that looks forward and kind of has the, camera
Side.
pointed back at you.
Hmm.
And he can just kind of turn it a little bit. Like it's basically at the driver. So, it kind of has the proof of, look, I was wearing my seatbelt. You can kind of see out the
Right.
back window, whatever. You angle it towards the driver window and you record the conversation. If you feel you're really going to, like, I've never been pulled over and been like, oh crap, let me whip out my phone and record this.
Right.
Not once has that ever occurred to me. However, if it had, and I was that guy, you can buy these cameras for as cheap as probably $40 and probably as expensive as 200 or 300, but you could, have a little camera there that's out of the way and unobtrusive. The big things that we see is, yeah, like in North Carolina where I am, you have the right to, record any interaction. Um, that's no problem. People have, they even passed a law in somewhere, Michigan or Wisconsin. I was Wyoming, maybe one of the W's. I don't know, where you can be within 8 feet of what's going on, and they actually struck that down and said no, you can't limit them. But if you're affecting somebody's safety, and that's kind of a thing, there's so many gray areas. And
Right.
I hate to say it, even though all the Karens of the world, we all like to think we know what's going on and
Hmm.
we know better. Sometimes there are things at play that you're not aware of. This guy, they may be like wrestling a gun out of, a guy's inside his sweatshirt or something. And
Right.
they're like, hey, you might want to move back. And you're
Right.
like,
And
no, I have a
you're
right
flipping
to
a
be
camera in
here.
their face. Right.
Right. And that's not, it's not going to be helpful. But if you stand back at a safe distance and you step away and say, hey, I'm just going to, record this, and that's what you feel you need to do, then knock yourself out.
Hmm. Now, let's say hypothetically the police come up to your front door and knock on your door.
All right.
What should you do in this situation? What would you do, Chuck, as a
I'd hide
as
under the
an
couch.
upstanding man? Would you run out and
Um,
open the door and invite the police officer into your living room to have a
Actually,
conversation?
you had your autism card.
Hmm.
I have a card that I just slide out under the door.
Okay.
Let me put it up on the screen. Maybe
It has
you
your.
can read it for us.
Oh, okay. All right.
All right. This is it.
Attention. This says, "Attention, law enforcement officer. I am an asshole on the on the asshole spectrum. Um, I talk I talk in a loud volume in an aggressive manner. I may have trouble communicating without profanities. I talk with my hands. I talk with my hands and may point or poke in your direction. Reacting aggressively can only escalate my behavior. Think of the additional paperwork and inconvenience. Being an asshole is not against the law. Be patient with me and just give me my fucking ticket. That's a legitimate
There-
card. I feel like that's I feel like that's something that everybody should be carrying in their wallet. I mean, if you're an asshole and if you're listening to the show, odds are, But let's
Right?
be honest.
Now, what about
If you're
sliding a
listening to the
tray of
show,
donuts? Like opening the door and
just
sliding
sliding them out.
some
It would be
donuts
better if
out?
you had a dog door. That would be okay, but I would not
Okay.
open my door
All right.
enough.
No,
You know what? So if you open the door, the police officer might put his foot inside your door to
they
keep
do
it from
like to
closing.
do that.
He
Yes.
might. He might do that. That's not technically okay, but that doesn't mean that he can do that. That doesn't mean he won't do that. And if you
Right.
ask him to move his foot, that doesn't mean he's gonna move his foot.
And if
You know
you
what I mean?
start slamming the door shut on his foot over
Yeah,
and
that's
over
not gonna
again,
work either.
that's not going to
Right.
help.
You can ask him to take his foot out of your door, but your
Yes.
better option would be to not answer the door and lock the door and ask them what they want.
Yes.
Let the police officer do the talking. You keep your mouth shut. I have probably a lot of people listening to this podcast are in a similar situation. I
Mhm.
have dogs that bite,
Yep.
I have large dogs that like to bite people.
All right.
So I had seen a police car down the road with the lights on. So I was kind of watching out my window, and my dogs let me know somebody was coming up to my house. So I opened the door, went outside, and closed the door behind me because what's in my house is my business. It's not a police
Right.
officer's business. But also, I'm a curious Karen. I'm trying to figure out what does this police officer want. So
Right.
he asked me if I had any cameras up, any ring cams or anything like that, because some house had been broken into up the street.
Yes.
Now I know the guy whose house had broken into, and he just got out of prison for selling heroin. So I mean, whatever. Now I said I didn't have any cameras, and whether I do or not, that's not really any of his business. And if I had footage, or if I didn't have footage of anything that happened in the street, I could bring it to my neighbor. I could give it to him,
Yep.
and he can give it to the police. But that's not really anybody's business but my business, what was going on in that situation, right?
Right.
As far as what cameras I have and what cameras I don't have. Having let the police do the talking. You can just keep your mouth shut. And your best advice would be that I will have my lawyer contact you. I will have
Yeah.
my lawyer leave your name and number. I will have my lawyer contact you.
Yeah.
That should be and the only thing you say to police officers that come to your house.
Now, a friend of mine had a bunch of fake cameras that he had around his yard to kind of deter criminal
They're cheap,
activity.
right?
And you $5, $10. I don't know if they get it out of like the Bud K catalog or what,
Mhm.
but they that was his thing. And he's like, yeah, I have all these cameras. And the cops were always, and he kind of was in the like city like area.
Right.
And the cops
So
would
people
always
drove
come by.
past his
I see
house.
your camera there. Can I see it? And we're
Mhm.
like, no, it's fake camera, buddy. Sorry. I
Mhm.
wanted your camera to do our job for us.
Right.
Right.
Cameras are a dangerous thing. I mean, I
Yeah.
feel like police were beating people's asses for a long time before cameras were a thing,
Yeah.
It seems like they're having a hard time getting used to these cameras. Did you see that video of the police officer putting drugs in somebody's car?
With his body cam? No.
Yeah. So apparently, when you turn on your body cam, it starts recording from 5 seconds previous. You know what I mean? Like it's always
Yeah.
recording, but it's not actually recording that stuff until you turn it on. But it backs up 15 seconds before
Okay.
that. So he put the drugs in the car, then turned his camera on,
And was
then,
like, look what I found.
yep.
Nick said
Yeah,
he
exactly.
saw it. Yeah.
Exactly. So now what does that mean for every other person that police officer has arrested before him?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Because this guy is shady,
Right.
And that's like you see a lot of the videos where the people who end up getting shot by the police and whatever. I mean, I think if we're honest, these are people who seem to continually have issues with the police.
The police
They're
officers
also
know them before.
people who have maybe social skills that are lacking. And I'm not saying you should be shot because you
Right.
have anxiety, you know,
Right.
but I'm just saying you understand how these things can escalate the situation. Uh like I was watching the video of that guy in Colorado, right at the school pickup line. That seems to be a big one going around now.
Right. Right.
And that guy clearly, I mean, he's probably high or he's just a tweaker. Like a lot of times, if you kind of just are on drugs all the time, like you're always a little off and a little
Right.
edgy. And
Uh-huh.
I mean, the guy in no way should have been shot. I mean,
Hmm.
clearly that cop was like, unable to deal with a stressful situation.
Hmm.
Right? And that was the whole thing. Like, I'm gonna get in some big pulling fist fight thing because
Right.
it just doesn't matter. I mean, I understand, like, hey, you have drugs in your pocket and you shove them in your mouth. That's what he believed happened, right?
Right.
I saw an argument later that he put in like an anti-anxiety thing or whatever, like an
Right.
anxiety chew or something. Um, but it doesn't matter. Like if he had LSD in his pocket and he's like shoving it in his mouth to
Right.
to
You
get
shouldn't get
the
shot for that.
yeah, it's a Colorado school pickup line. You got to check it out. And you can
Mhm.
see the videos. They shoot him on the camera. You're like, "Oh, whoa, this is rough." But the guy's standing there and he's like, I guess again, it's an honest mistake, but an unfortunate mistake. And I don't mean the cop shooting him. What happened is the guy got out of his car and went to go smoke a cigarette. And they're in like the school pickup line, and maybe the cars are moving and changing positions or whatever. But as you know, a school pickup line, everybody's got kind of the same SUVs and whatever,
Right.
and they all look the
Right.
same.
Trying
The
not to
guy,
run over children,
right,
but move along,
right. The guy comes back and it's a white, like he's in a white Lexus, and there's like three or four other white SUVs, not Lexuses,
Mm.
but it's not his car, it's his mom's car, or his mom's boyfriend's car. We don't really
Right.
know because the mom's in the passenger seat, some other guy's driving, and he's in the back seat. He comes back to a car apparently, tries to open the door handle, and it's locked or they lock the door. And it's
Mm.
not clear from the video if he actually opened the door or if they just saw him come up and locked it and he couldn't get
Right.
in.
But it was
Either
somebody
way,
else's car.
right, it was somebody else's car. He was wrong. I mean, there's
Right.
no question. He like knocks on the window and is like, "Hey, open the fucking door," or something along that line, right? But again, this is something you might do if, you're
Right.
with your family member. I mean, maybe not me, but somebody else might be like, "Hey, open the fucking door." Like, what the hell? And he realized his mistake when he kind of like looked in the window and was like, "Oh, that's fucked up." So the lady calls the police, a reasonable thing. Like I kind of get it. Like
Right.
you just do something stupid. Like, hey, come here, kid, and you think it's your kid, and you're like, oh wait, sorry,
Right.
wrong kid.
Somebody
Whoop,
else's
whoop.
kid. Yeah.
Like, and yeah, that's creepy and terrifying for the kid, but it doesn't mean you had ill intent or this guy was clearly not trying to break it. So anyway, cops show up, they come over and they're like, "Hey, buddy, what happened? Just tell us your side of the story." And it seems like the cop's really easy. And he's like, "Hey, what's going on?" And the guy's like, "Yeah, I went to the wrong car." And he explains what I just told you. And so it doesn't sound like a big deal. And he's very like fidgety and kind of drug guy. And they're like,
Right.
"Oh, are you on something?" And he's like, "No, no, I just hate cops." And he's like, he's like, "I'm afraid of cops." And the guy's like, well, why would you be? It wasn't us, right? We're the good cops, and it's the other ones that are bad. And the guy's
Right.
kind of like, yeah, they're all kind of funny to me, but it's okay. And this cop's like, well, and he said something again, really casual, like, "Oh, I'm just afraid they've been rough with me before, and I don't want to be messed up."
Right.
And the cops just like all of a sudden turns aggressive. Something triggered him. He saw something or he whatever, but he's like, Why would you be afraid?" And he starts, "That's ridiculous," and starts like getting intense with the guy. And again, this is a guy that's like barely hanging on to
Right.
functioning skills in
Right.
my mind. Like that was how I perceived the
He's barely
situation.
there.
the guy's barely hanging in there, not the cop, the
Right.
tweaker guy, right? You're like, all right, this guy's on the edge. You don't, and not like the edge of being aggressive, just it's all it's
Right.
taking all his energy to have this conversation.
Hmm.
And the cop just keeps escalating and escalating. So the guy does like bring his hand up. It's not clear if he even puts anything in his mouth, but that's kind of what it said in the things I heard, was that he was like kind of maybe going for some anxiety stuff, which
Right.
maybe it's just like his CBD gummies or whatever.
Yeah.
I
Who
don't know.
knows what it is?
Right. Doesn't matter. I mean, it's Colorado, right? They have all kinds of, who knows
Hmm.
what's going on out there. So the cop like rips him out of the car, and the guy's like just freaking out. And it does look like he's kind of resisting. It's hard to tell, but the cop just like shoots him like 3 or 4 times. And it's 3 times. There's a couple of guys, but then the guy falls on the ground and he's still breathing and kind of moving. And the cops just like, matter of fact, well, that was stressful and whatever. They're not doing anything to
Right.
kind of try and stop the bleeding. Oh, I think he's
Uh-huh.
dead.
All
I
the
don't
little
know.
kids in the coming out to get the ride home, or watching
Yeah, they're
you
like, the
shoot
guy's
somebody to
like, well,
death.
is he breathing? I don't think he's breathing anymore. And they're just kind of like, whatever, and like, let it play out. Like,
Right.
they don't make any effort to de-escalate. Like that's where it like really falls apart. And you're like, oh, you guys really don't care.
Right.
Or,
I mean, hypothetically, you shouldn't have to be the one that's escalating the situation,
yeah,
but that's not always how it works out.
exactly. And that's, more and more, we look through this stuff. Yes, like the big thing, like I looked up a lot of the stop and frisk stuff, and can a cop just search you? Can they demand you show the ID? Because you always see these videos. Why have my rights and I don't have to show you my ID? There's so much gray area that you
Right.
just
There's a
kind of are
lot of
stuck.
gray area there.
So if they have a, I mean, they're like, oh, a reasonable suspicion.
Right.
Then, well,
Well,
yeah.
first
What's
off,
a
if you're driving a car and a police officer asks for your ID, you have to give them the ID.
in most states?
Right.
There
If
are
you're
some
walking
gray
on the
areas,
street,
but
though,
yeah,
there's a lot of gray in that area there.
right.
So
But again,
if
you're
they
just
stop you and say you
escalating.
match a description, they want to see your ID.
Then they have probable cause. You're getting into it just
Right.
is
They
a
have to
mess.
articulate a crime
Right.
that may have been committed, is being committed, or is about to be committed.
Right.
But I wouldn't push that one. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? You could also
exactly.
just show them your ID.
And that's the thing. So I feel like the way I would approach it is I don't consent to the search, but you just kind of let them do whatever they want to do. Like,
Right.
hey, you're going to frisk me. I'm not going to put my hands up and be like, hey, no, stop. That's not me. Because why? How
Right.
is that going to help anything?
Hmm.
That's what I always wonder. Like, you see these guys and they're like, oh, put your hands behind your back. Well, wait, I have to tell you these 5 stories before
Right.
I'm going to comply with you.
Hmm.
That's not going to help your situation.
Right.
Um,
And it might be your rights, but
it's not going to help.
not
All
going to
right.
help out.
I do have a video. Let's watch a video. Yeah, that's it. I mean, somebody, Nick here, just pointed out, maybe they have spare time to hang out in jail. And I feel like that's kind of right.
Yeah.
That's it. I want to get back to my life. And I feel like most cops, want to get back to their life. They want to go back to eating donuts. I want to go back to eating donuts. I mean, really, we all just
Right.
want to go back to eating donuts, really, is what it comes down
Uh-huh.
to. But that's the thing is, it's like, hey, we got our thing to do. Maybe they want to go back to the gym. Maybe I want to go back to the shooting range. We don't
Hmm.
have to use the derogatory, but is it really derogatory? I mean, doesn't everyone like donuts? I mean, that's how I feel. But
Yeah.
I do have one video I wanted to drop on you guys.
All right.
I thought about the car one, but it goes so long. That
All
one.
right.
Check
Is
this
this
out and
something
tell
that's
me
going to
what you
piss
guys
us
think.
all off?
It's gonna piss you off a little bit. I have one video. Let's drop
All right.
this.
Let me see your hands. Let me see your hands. Your hands in your pockets. Turn up the chain, bud. Excuse me. Being detained, bud. Don't take your backpack off. Take your backpack off.
Excuse me, what am I doing?
Take your backpack off.
Can you explain what this is
Before
for?
you go on the ground, take your backpack off.
I'm going to get picked up for work.
Come on. Since we want to play this game,
Sir,
put your hands behind your back.
this is my phone.
Put it down.
Can you tell me what's going on?
Just put your hands behind your back before you end up on the ground.
Sir, drop my phone. Hello? Are you telling me what's going on?
You're being detained for a minute. You matching the description of someone trying to break into people's cars.
I'm not breaking anyone's car.
All right. So you kind of get the idea, right? Now, both people did a lot of things wrong in this video. And for those of you watching, this is the one guy standing there with his backpack on. Cop pulls up. He's got information that somebody with a backpack, that's his evidence. Somebody with a backpack was breaking into cars, and I need to go over and check this guy out. Now, the guy, again, I saw videos, that's like almost a year old now, I think. And I saw videos of the guy talking now about how he's suing the city and stuff. And honestly, he should. I mean, the cop was out of control and clearly doesn't know how to deal with people.
He broke several of his bones.
He broke his collarbone, and yeah, it was bad. But so, and I guess he fractured his skull too.
Fractured
It
his
was,
skull,
yeah,
broke his
it was bad.
collarbone,
But yeah, it's somebody, you know, said, hey, it looked like a dumbass contest. And it really was. I mean, that's the thing. Like, either party could have stopped that from ending badly, but neither one did. They just go down this road of crazy town. So the guy, like, so I was saying, I've seen these interviews with the guy, the victim, and he's not together. Like, everything is like, seems to be in a confused state and
He
disoriented.
did get his skull fractured, so I mean, you have to give him a little bit of leeway.
Well, all right, but even a year later, he seems confused and disoriented. I think I watched like a lot. That video goes on, and it sounds like the guy's like, "Hey, I just started getting my life back together," and like maybe he had a few. And yeah, exactly. Somebody said, you know, maybe pot causes more damage.
Right. That happens.
You know, come over here and do this. And the guy's like, what? All right. Sorry, my camera thing here blipped out on me, I think. But so anyway, the guy's like disoriented and just not got it together. And, you know, that's how it goes sometimes. But the cop should be able to deal with this and deal with the pace. There was nothing really threatening to the cop that he needed to react in a violent manner. Basically, kind of grabs him around the waist and like suplexes him. You know, he lifts him up and throws his body onto the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it's the worst suplex I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, it's just
that is
bad.
what he does, and he
Right.
drops him head first on the asphalt.
Right. And that's it. I mean, honestly, you know, they teach you when you handcuff somebody, you're responsible for their care. And I understand this guy isn't restrained at this point, but he kind of is. Like, the cop is like completely
has
around
control
his
of it.
body. He
Right.
does. The cop has, you know, control of the guy's body. The guy's got like both arms. He's standing behind him trying to remove a backpack, but he's completely like around. The police car is in front of the guy, and the cop is behind him and has an arm on either side of him. So the guy doesn't have free will to be in control of his body. And I understand the guy could reach for something, but both his hands are out on the hood. However, several times the cop's like, hey, put your hands behind your back, or you know, take your backpack off, or whatever he wants him to do. And the guy just like, oh, I don't think so. I don't understand. And again, the cop is not like, they get on this big power trip of, I'm in charge, so you just need to do what I say.
Right. You need to obey.
That's not really cool. You know, that's where we're getting into trouble here. And it would be cool if we could all kind of get along. I mean, a police interaction, like, Kevin mentioned earlier, you're dealing with somebody on your worst day. These are
Mhm.
the times that are stressful and whatever. And, detained isn't arrested. Exactly. I mean, that's the thing. But you just, you go with it and you deal with the lawyers later, let the
Mhm.
lawyers straighten out that the cop's a dick. Now, cops do have this jackass thing called qualified immunity.
Right,
Now,
right.
that's
And
not
this makes a
even,
lot of sense in a
yeah,
lot of situations.
it does. It's not really a law. It's kind of what a court just said one day.
Mhm.
I believe the Supreme Court, though, they were, and they're like, hey, this is, we can't have people but the idea is supposed to be if a cop is acting, it's one of those stupid laws that doesn't make any sense. And here's why I say that. If the cop's acting in the best interests of the job, the community, and society, then you're protected anyway. You don't need special protection. I understand somebody might get shot because, a kid comes out with a cap gun and it looks just like a real gun and he points it at the cop and the cop shoots the kid. It sucks. It's a horrible situation. A cop should have maybe read it better, but you don't know. And you know what? He has a right to go home to his family too. And him shooting back may, in some instances, be the right decision with the information and the time and, what he has. However, that doesn't mean you can just walk up and start cracking skulls and, well, I have qualified immunity because, you looked shady and, that's how it is. But I don't
Yeah,
know.
it's definitely a tricky situation because qualified immunity covers a lot. It covers all the things that are appropriate, but it also covers a lot of things that may not be appropriate. And qualified immunity means that you're acting on the job. Just because you're a police officer and you're off duty and you shoot your neighbor's dog with a pellet gun doesn't mean that that's qualified immunity, right?
Right.
But the courts can see things differently, and be honest with you, the judge and the prosecutor, they all work with the cops. These are all people that are working together for the same goal, and so it
Right.
benefits them to believe the cop before they believe you. Nobody is, when it comes to your word versus a cop's word, it's not going to go well in your favor. And a lot of those things get escalated by both police officers and civilians, and things get a little bit weird, and that qualified immunity covers a lot of ground that maybe it shouldn't. And so I'm not saying I'm opposed to qualified immunity. What
Right.
I'm saying is that it sometimes it seems like it covers a little bit too much for some of these police officers that act overly aggressive.
Yeah. Well, I think so. It was the 1960s and it was the Supreme Court. And they basically, decided that, hey, if the government is acting in good faith, then they have extra protection, basically. The job is kind of protected. Think of it like the Good Samaritan laws and things like that, where, if you go to help somebody and you do the wrong thing trying to save their life because you didn't quite understand, CPR, it turns out that it's not 5 chest compressions and 3 breaths now. Now we do 30 chest compressions and 3 breaths or whatever. The idea is you were acting under good faith and the best thing of what you were, supposed to do. That's basically what qualified immunity is. And but however, they seem to apply it to kind of anything where, hey, you went to the complete wrong house and went in and busted up a 78-year-old guy and you threw flashbangs in his living room because you didn't look at the mailbox out front. They gave the cops in that instance qualified immunity. And I'm like, it's kind of you got to try to do your job.
Right. You have to try to do the right thing.
And
Right.
it was that one, the one I'm thinking of was one of those instances where they're all like turning their cameras off, like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
should stop
Should
everybody.
not
And
be recording this.
yeah, this is gonna end bad for us, and it was one of those. And it was like as they were raiding the house, some of the guys are like, wait, is it the house over there? Is it this house?
It's too
You
late.
know,
We're going in.
we're going in and we're cracking skulls. And that's one of those things. So that's somebody put it implies to the cop and doing what as trained in the scope of the job. Yeah, well, exactly. It's kind of the just following orders mindset somebody put
Right.
in here. And that's kind of right. But again, I mean, you're still accountable to, we take an oath to uphold the Constitution, right? In the military, and
Right.
I
And I,
assume
I
cops
feel
do
I
that
feel
kind
that
of
all
thing too.
presidents and congressmen and police officers take a similar oath.
Right.
The Constitution, um, a lot of people view the Constitution as protections on what the government can't do. And it's one of the few constitutions in the world that specifically outline what the police and the government cannot do. Um,
Right.
and when it
And
comes to upholding the Constitution, that means protecting other people's rights as well as your own. And if you're the police officer and you take an oath to uphold the Constitution, that means that you have to protect their rights. But, police officers can also lie to you. I wouldn't lie to
oh,
the police, but remember that they can lie to you.
yeah, you've seen Law and Order, right?
Hmm.
That's the thing. There are cops like that
I
just
found
kind of.
I found a hair. We found a hair at the
Was
scene.
it remember that movie Brothers with Marky Mark
Yes.
or whatever?
Yes.
And all through the movie, the guy's like, "Well, I have a hair sample." And I was just
Mhm.
like, "Yeah, get out of here," And that's kind of a thing. I mean, they could definitely, hey, your buddy in the next room just
He told me
confessed that
everything
he
that
said
did.
you did everything, and you're
Right.
like, "But that's not true. It was his idea." And you're,
Mhm.
"Oh, what? What do you mean you did do it?" Well, no, wait, and that's kind of how those things go.
Yeah, and
Now,
if you ever watch those shows, Cops or Another 48 Hours where they do the interrogations, man, it seems like everybody they interrogate just talks themselves into admitting to a crime. Like it
they
really
do.
happens. Like this isn't,
It does.
it's not just on TV shows.
Yeah, no,
Uh,
that's a real thing. People
yeah.
will, if they
If you're
just
ever
leave you
being
there
interrogated,
talking. Yeah,
you should say, "I want to talk to my lawyer," and you
yeah,
should have a lawyer. You should know a
yeah,
lawyer's name at least, at
yeah.
minimum.
Lawyer
Lawyer,
is really
lawyer,
where it all comes
and
down.
they might not be allowed to ask you any more questions when they're interrogating you after you ask for a lawyer, but they can
Or they
certainly
will.
talk. They can talk to
Yeah.
themselves. They can talk to each other, all about all the stuff that you did, and you might want to object and say,
Well,
"Wait a
hey,
minute,
that part
that's not
isn't
true."
true. Yeah.
Don't say nothing. Let them talk. Let them talk all they want until your lawyer shows up. And you know what your lawyer's going to tell you? Shut up. Don't say anything.
Yep. And it's over and over again. You guys really gotta, remember that one. That's the takeaway. But hopefully we don't have interactions with police. Turns out I've gone my whole life without, I've been pulled over maybe 3 times, 4 times tops for, hey, you might have been going a little fast or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
let's not talk about how many times you've been pulled over. I drive fast all the time, so
well,
I
you're a
mean,
hooligan. I mean, everybody
it
looks at you and
happens.
is like,
It
yeah,
happens.
Kevin's kind
But
of
I do
shady.
have this you know, this luxurious beard, and I really
Yes.
feel that after I grew this beard, every cop that pulls me over lets me go with a warning, and I think it's the power of the
Nice.
beard. I recommend that everybody grows a beard, because it makes you more respectable and a reasonable adult that knows what's going on in their life. Grow a
Oh,
beard, take care of it, maintain it. Don't let it, a lot of girls will look at a beard and say, huh, I bet that smells bad. Don't let your
yeah,
beard smell bad. This is all this is all reasonable advice for grown adults in the United States.
right. Now, there is a question in the comments about the sovereign citizen thing, Kevin. Now, I feel like you opened a can of worms because that's almost like a whole other show there, I gotta
Right.
say.
That's a whole other show.
But
It's the same
the
people
idea
that don't
is,
believe that the government has the right to
yes,
charge you taxes. Like you
pretty
don't have an
much.
obligation. They believe that you don't have an obligation to pay taxes. They believe that they can live their life you know,
You have a right to
without
travel.
having to interact with the government. Right. They're in the process of locomotion. They can be on a
Yes,
bicycle, they can be walking, they can be in a car. A police officer cannot impede any of those actions.
is what
Those
they
are all
believe,
things that are
right?
not true.
And
And you can argue with them. You might even be able to find a lawyer that can argue them, but it's not going to go over well with a judge. It's just
it
not going to work.
never seems to end well. Yeah,
No,
but they're like, "Oh, I'm in free travel." And as soon as you do that, the cops immediately are like, "Oh, this guy's crazy."
they roll
And
their eyes. They know what's up. They've heard it before,
they've
and
heard it before.
they're
Yeah.
not putting up with it.
And it I mean, you can get into the semantics if you interpret the Constitution. I mean, the bottom line is, well, has the government overstepped and gone way beyond their power and reach? Yes. But have we as a society accepted that and allowed that to go on? The answer is also yes. So once you get in there, it's hard to be like, well, I don't accept that, but it's like you're not accepting reality.
Right.
The world has moved on, and even though we don't want it to be true, I don't want there to be all these gun laws that do clearly violate the Second Amendment in my mind. I should be able to have full auto machine guns, but just because I have one does, if I go and get one, does not make
Right.
it okay.
Just because you want it to be legal doesn't mean it's legal, and just because
Right.
you think it should be legal doesn't mean that a judge hasn't already ruled on these things. Like a
Yeah.
judge has ruled on giving the cop the middle finger. You can do that legally. You can. That is a First Amendment right. You can give the cop the finger,
Yeah.
but that doesn't mean that you should give a cop the
So
finger.
so that's what I was looking. Some of these are like, oh, I have the right to videotape the police, and they're, over billy clubbing people, and you're out there with your camera and you're like, oh, I got it all on camera. So the cop in some states, they can arrest you for like jaywalking and things like this. Well, what they're doing is the cop arrests them for being in the street and obstructing traffic and things like that. And that's legitimate.
Hmm.
Well, he's arresting you because you were recording him, but he's going to write down that you were breaking the law because guess what? You maybe were breaking the law.
Right.
And you don't want to open the door to, bad things. You don't want to invite opportunities. And that's where you get into trouble and gray area. So, bottom line, don't start none, won't be none. Right?
Right.
Isn't that
Right.
pretty much what it
If
comes
you don't
down
have a
to?
law degree, you're an idiot. You don't know anything. You know what I mean? Don't try and assert your rights. If you don't have a
If
law
you
degree,
get your
let your lawyer do that.
if
The
you
only
get your
rights that
legal
you have to
advice from a
assert.
podcast,
Hmm.
you
Hey,
might be
don't take
wrong.
advice from us. Yeah, that's a bad idea listening to us. But also,
Um,
this is just entertainment, right?
but the idea is that you need to, hey, keep your mouth shut, get a lawyer, but go along. If you comply, it's going to end better than if you don't. Now, there's nothing wrong, with trying to stick up for yourself, but I'm telling you, just do what you're told. Let them worry about the safety thing when they feel calm and relaxed. Then, if you feel you have to say something, even though your lawyer is telling you no, that's the time. Do what it
Hmm.
takes to let the cop feel calm and relaxed, and then maybe you won't get shot. I'm just saying. That
Hmm.
could be a thing. I mean, I know usually I'm pretty easy. I turn on the light in the car. I live in a state where you're required to say, hey, there's a concealed weapon in the car. Not all states you're required to do that. That's one of the few things that New York actually surpasses others in. I know at least when I lived there, you didn't have to say if you had a concealed weapon. But bottom line, when I say it here in North Carolina, they're like, oh, I don't care. And that's great. Fine. Let's move on. There's not a thing. Um, but
Hmm.
hey, that's what I can say for you. But basically, if you're enjoying this, I would like if you liked the podcast, like
Like,
the YouTube
subscribe.
video,
Yeah.
subscribe.
If you've had
Those
any
things help
interesting
us out.
interactions with cops, let us know in the comments.
That would be great. Tell us what you're thinking, like what you think about the whole sovereign citizen thing. You know, there's some cool videos. They're pretty interesting if you search that out. But yeah, I hate to say it, society has moved on as much as we don't want them to. Doesn't mean it's right, doesn't mean I accept it and want it to be that way, but it is the world that we live in. And, that's the thing. You kind of have to live in the world that's before us. The government does all kinds of things that violates the Constitution. And as you know, with this podcast, I speak out against it all the time. But it also doesn't mean that I run around and don't pay taxes, or I do pay taxes. I play the game because, give to Caesar what is Caesar's, right?
Right.
Turns out Jesus knew something. So, but that's what I got. I mean, that's where we're at on this. Be nice to cops. They're trying to do a job. And if you are a cop and you know an asshole, maybe you call them out. Now, there is another thing we didn't really have time to get into about the blue wall of silence. People are always like, oh, why don't cops, speak out when, hey, this guy was an idiot, and they all just stand around and watch and whatever. That's a whole dangerous road. But it turns out if they speak out, a lot of cops will get fired, get demoted. They never get hired in another, law enforcement thing when they, speak out against things. I feel like if I'm the sheriff, I'm looking for guys who stood up against jackassery. I'm like, hey, I want that guy on my force. But it creates a lot of tension. And, there's ugliness there. So just to understand, maybe the guy is trying to be a light in a dark world shining, where he's like, hey, I'm just going to be the good guy. And there are guys out there doing it. So it'd be cool if we all gave people the benefit of the doubt. But then again, on the flip side, make sure you protect yourself, Try not to get your head smashed on the ground. That's what I'd do.
Yeah, try not to get suplexed.
Yeah. And maybe just don't give the cop the bird, right? That's what Nick was saying in the comments.
It's also okay to not give him the finger. All right. That sounds good, man. If you guys have anything you want to talk about, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Chuck, do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I think we are got it all. So with that, stay safe, and we will talk to you guys next week.